All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving deep into ancient Prayagraj.
Or, as you might know it,
Yeah,
Allahabad.
Allahabad, exactly. We're going to journey back in time over 1,300 years
Oh,
to see what this place was really like way back when. And we've got an incredible guide, the writings of a 7th century Chinese traveler, Xuanzang.
now Xuanzang wasn't just some casual traveler, oh no. This guy was meticulous, a real chronicler.
Like taking notes on everything.
Everything. From the politics,
To the food, probably.
maybe the food, but definitely the religious practices, giving us this amazing glimpse into a period we wouldn't know much about otherwise.
And we're lucky enough to have this awesome YouTube video breaking it all down,
Oh yeah.
featuring historian Rajendra Prasad Singh.
He's fantastic.
And get this, what we're about to uncover might just flip your whole understanding of Prayagraj, its origins.
You think you know Prayagraj?
Think again, even the famous Kumbh Mela.
Oh, the Kumbh Mela.
It's going to get seriously mind-blowing.
Now, one thing that jumps out from Xuanzang's accounts is just how massive this place was. He's talking about the kingdom sprawling over 5,000 li.
5,000 li.
That's an ancient Chinese unit, but
I mean, how big are we talking?
even if the exact conversion's debated, it's vast, a seriously impressive kingdom.
So nothing like the Prayagraj we know today, huh?
Not even close.
It's like trying to imagine.
What, like Times Square?
Yeah, Times Square.
This ancient, sprawling
Chariots instead of taxis.
chariots, exactly. Really puts into perspective how significant Prayagraj must have been back then.
But here's where it gets really interesting. According to Xuanzang, this wasn't just any powerful kingdom. This was a major Buddhist hub.
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about monasteries full of monks and a massive stupa.
A stupa, huh?
It's like a giant Buddhist
With
monument.
a dome.
Yeah, a giant dome. And built by none other than Emperor Ashoka himself.
Now, that's a big name. Ashoka, he was key to spreading Buddhism throughout India back in the 3rd century BCE.
So him building a stupa there, that's a pretty big deal, right?
Huge deal. These stupas weren't just buildings, they were like repositories for sacred relics, centers for pilgrimage, meditation, the whole shebang.
And Xuanzang even gave us the measurements.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he said it was at least 100 feet tall, even with a slightly sunken foundation.
Wow. 100 feet.
That's like a 10-story building dominating the skyline.
Can you imagine?
Really paints a picture of how central Buddhism was to ancient Prayagraj.
It wasn't just limited to these monasteries and stupas, though. Xuanzang talks about this place called the Bhumi.
The Bhumi.
It was huge, specifically set aside for grand acts of charity.
Oh, interesting.
And get this, it was located right where the Kumbh Mela happens today.
No way.
Yeah.
So the same spot where millions gather now for this massive Hindu pilgrimage.
Was once a center for Buddhist giving.
That's wild. And we're not talking about just, small-scale charity. Xuanzang talks about King Harshavardhana
Oh yeah, a prominent ruler.
donating 5 years' worth of his royal treasury at this Bhumi.
5 years. That's a seriously generous king.
Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
But this wasn't just about helping people. It was also about showing off that power, that piety.
Oh, absolutely. And here's that Buddhist connection again. Xuanzang mentions these events always started with, get this, the adornment of a Gautama Buddha statue.
Not just a coincidence, huh?
No way. This shows how intertwined Buddhism was with the politics, the society, everything in ancient Prayagraj.
Okay, so we've got this massive Buddhist kingdom, this colossal stupa, this tradition of crazy generosity, all happening where we now associate the Kumbh Mela.
Pretty mind-blowing, right?
But hold on, because we're about to wade into a mystery deeper than the Ganges itself.
Ooh.
The enigma of the Triveni Sangam.
Now, this is where things get a little tricky.
A little bit.
So Prayagraj, it's famous for the Triveni Sangam, right? That sacred meeting point of 3 rivers.
The Ganga, Yamuna.
And Saraswati, right?
Exactly. But Xuanzang, in all his super detailed descriptions,
He doesn't.
he only mentions 2 rivers,
2.
the Ganga and the Yamuna.
You'd think he'd mention the 3rd one.
I know, right? And I know what you're thinking. Maybe he just forgot.
It happens.
But come on, this is Xuanzang, the guy who documented the height of a slightly sunken stupa.
He wouldn't miss a whole river.
Exactly. The fact that he doesn't mention that 3rd river, traditionally the Saraswati,
That's weird.
it's more than weird. It's incredibly intriguing.
It is. And here's where it gets even crazier. Xuanzang isn't the only one who seems to have missed this river.
Oh, really?
If we look at other historical sources, like the writings of Valmiki,
Valmiki, the author of the Ramayana.
that's the one, and the famous poet Kalidasa,
Oh, we love Kalidasa.
they both describe Prayagraj with only two rivers, the Ganga and the Yamuna.
So we've got multiple figures across different periods, all describing only two rivers.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. What's the deal with this Triveni thing?
Is it possible that what we think we know,
About the Sangam?
about the Triveni Sangam, maybe it's not the whole story?
Ooh, I like where this is going.
You know, the term Triveni, it doesn't have to mean three separate rivers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Renowned scholar Kishori Das Vajpeyi suggests it could refer to three currents or streams.
Interesting.
So think about it. The Ganga, the Yamuna, and then that super powerful current they create when they merge.
Oh, I see. So those could be the three parts of the Triveni Sangam.
Exactly. It kind of changes how we think about it, right?
It does, yeah. But this brings us to what might be the biggest head-scratcher of this whole deep dive.
Uh-oh.
Xuanzang, with all his meticulous notes and observations, he makes absolutely zero mention of the Kumbh Mela taking place in Prayagraj while he was there.
Wow. That's a pretty huge detail to leave out, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, if it was such a big deal back then, wouldn't he have at least mentioned it in passing?
You'd think so, right? A gathering that massive, you can't just miss it.
It's like writing a whole travel blog about New York City
Yeah.
and not mentioning Times Square.
Haha.
So if the Kumbh Mela wasn't happening in Xuanzang's time, how did it become such a huge part of Prayagraj's identity?
Well, history is rarely straightforward, you know?
Right.
Traditions, practices, they evolve over time, and sometimes it's really hard to trace exactly how.
Yeah.
The Kumbh Mela, as we know it today, it probably developed over centuries, maybe even millennia.
So not like a sudden, bam, here it is.
Yeah.
More like a gradual buildup.
Exactly. Like, think about it. The confluence of the Ganga and Yamuna, that's been considered sacred in Hinduism for ages.
Forever, yeah.
So it's very likely that smaller gatherings, maybe pilgrimages, were already happening at the Sangam way before the Kumbh Mela took on its current form.
Makes sense, especially given how important rivers are in Hinduism. People have been drawn to them for spiritual reasons for, like, ever.
Right. But the question is, how did those smaller gatherings turn into the mega event we see today? What sparked that change?
That's a good question.
Now, this gets a bit more speculative, but some historians think the Kumbh Mela, with its 12-year cycle and that whole legend of the Amrit Manthan, the churning of the ocean for immortality,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
it might have gained prominence during the Gupta period,
The Gupta periods.
around the 4th to 6th centuries CE.
Oh, yeah, the Gupta period. I remember learning about that, like the golden age of India.
Exactly. Art, science, literature, all booming.
And religion was flourishing, too.
You got it. Big time. During the Gupta period, you see this resurgence of Hindu rituals and practices. Huge, elaborate temples were being built, and pilgrimage sites became way more important.
So it makes sense that the Kumbh Mela, with all its focus on ritual bathing for purification and spiritual stuff, would have taken off during that time.
Right. It fits the vibe.
Okay, so we have a possible time frame for when the Kumbh Mela might have become the big show it is today. But why Prayagraj specifically? Out of all the holy places in India, why did this location become the sought for the Kumbh Mela?
Well, that's where the Triveni Sangam, whether it's three rivers or three currents, really comes into play. This confluence, it's been considered super sacred for centuries, even before the Kumbh Mela supposedly started.
We talked about Valmiki and Kalidasa earlier, how they both highlighted the Ganga and Yamuna. Sounds like this place already had a spiritual vibe going on.
Totally. The confluence was already seen as this spiritually charged spot, and the Kumbh Mela might have just layered on top of that pre-existing sacred landscape.
So it wasn't like someone was like, hey, let's have the Kumbh Mela here.
Right, haha. It was more like it grew organically from those beliefs and practices already tied to the Triveni Sangam.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a buildup of spiritual energy over time.
Yeah, exactly. This layering of traditions and rituals over time, it's a common thing in Indian history. Religious practices, they evolve, adapt, take bits and pieces from different periods, different influences.
Like adding layers to a cake.
Yes. Each layer adds to the final flavor.
I like that analogy. But you mentioned the Gupta period theory is just one idea about the Kumbh Mela's origins, right? Are there others?
Oh, definitely. Some scholars think the Kumbh Mela goes way, way back, like to the Vedic period.
The Vedic period, that's like Ancient.
Super ancient. But the people who support this theory, they point to these Vedic texts that mention ritual bathing at sacred confluences.
Like a way to purify yourself, connect with the divine.
Exactly. And they argue that the Kumbh Mela might have evolved from those early Vedic practices, slowly turning into the event we know today.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. To think about those ancient rituals transforming over centuries. But are there any other explanations for how the Kumbh Mela came about?
There is one more. Some connect the Kumbh Mela, as we know it now, with the medieval period.
The medieval period. That's a big jump from the Vedic era.
It is, yeah. But think about the medieval period. Powerful Hindu kingdoms ruling most of India.
Right, and religion and politics were super intertwined back then.
Exactly. Rulers were big on supporting religious institutions, often using them to, show their power, solidify their legitimacy.
So they might have used religious events to flex their muscles a bit.
Totally. And it's been suggested that the Kumbh Mela, with its ability to draw huge crowds and create this religious fervor, might have been strategically promoted by rulers during the medieval period.
Like a way to show off their authority.
Exactly. In this interpretation, the Kumbh Mela becomes more than just a religious gathering. It's also a tool of political and religious power.
It's amazing how something that might have started as a spiritual practice could become so tied up with politics.
It is. It shows how complex things get, how religion, politics, social dynamics, they all mix together throughout history.
It's a reminder that even traditions that seem super sacred, they've been influenced by the power structures of their time.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got these three main theories. The Gupta period, focusing on that resurgence of Hindu rituals. The Vedic period, connecting it to those really old practices, and the medieval period, suggesting rulers used religion for their own ends. But where does that leave us? With all these different ideas, are we any closer to understanding the Kumbh Mela and its connection to ancient Prayagraj?
Well, we have to remember these are just three interpretations out of many.
Right.
The origins of the Kumbh Mela, they're still debated, and honestly, we might never have a definitive answer.
So some mysteries remain unsolved.
They do, but that's part of what makes history so cool.
Yes, always keeps you guessing.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we haven't learned anything important along the way. What we can say for sure is that Prayagraj, with its sacred confluence, it's been a spiritually significant place for a long, long time.
It seems like Prayagraj has always had this draw, this spiritual magnetism, whether it was the Buddhism that Xuanzang described or that ancient reverence for the Ganga and Yamuna.
Absolutely. The Triveni Sangam, however you interpret it, it's always held a special place for people. And that spiritual energy, it seems to have set the stage for the Kumbh Mela, even if we don't know exactly when and how it emerged.
So even though we don't have all the answers, we've gotten a much better understanding of the complex history that shaped the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah, it's like peeling back a layer of Prayagraj's past, a layer that challenges what we thought we knew and makes us want to learn more.
Totally. And it reminds us that even the most well-known traditions, they have a story, a history waiting to be uncovered. And often, those stories are full of surprises, contradictions, and mysteries that make you wonder what other secrets are hidden just beneath the surface. So we've journeyed through ancient Prayagraj, explored its Buddhist heart, and even grappled with the mysteries surrounding the Kumbh Mela's origins. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty mind-blown right now.
It's amazing how much one source, like Xuanzang's writings, can change our whole perspective on a place we thought we knew.
It's like we were looking at a flat picture of Prayagraj, and suddenly, boom, 3D model, all these hidden depths and complexities popping out. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a step back. What can we take away from all this? What does it mean for us today?
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is don't take things for granted. Don't assume. We often see the Kumbh Mela as this ancient, unchanging tradition, but Xuanzang's account throws a wrench in that. It's a good reminder that even the most established traditions have a history, and often it's a lot more complex than we realize.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of the modern Kumbh Mela and think, oh, it's always been this way. But history rarely fits into neat little boxes, right? It's full of surprises, contradictions, different ways of seeing things.
Exactly. And this deep dive has been a great reminder to always approach history with a critical eye, question what we think we know, and be open to different interpretations.
And that's such an important skill, not just for understanding history, but for navigating the world in general. I mean, we're constantly bombarded with information from everywhere. Being able to critically examine different narratives is more crucial now than ever.
Totally. And this deep dive has given us a perfect example of how to do that. We've looked at different sources, weighed various theories, considered different perspectives.
Another thing that really struck me is that history is a process, not a destination. Prayagraj has gone through so many transformations over the centuries, from a Buddhist center to a place of grand charity to the heart of the Kumbh Mela. It reminds us that nothing stays the same forever.
It's true. Cultures and traditions are constantly evolving, adapting to new situations, taking on new influences. Even the Kumbh Mela keeps changing, reflecting how India is changing.
Makes you realize history isn't just something that happened in the past. It's a living, breathing thing that shapes who we are and how we see the world.
It really is. We're all part of this ongoing story, contributing our own experiences and perspectives. But it brings up an important question. Why does all this matter? What do we gain from understanding ancient Prayagraj and the mysteries of the Kumbh Mela's origins?
That's the big question. What do you think? How can digging into these historical puzzles enrich our lives today?
I think it's about developing empathy and understanding. When we explore the past, when we immerse ourselves in the complexities of history, we get a much deeper appreciation for the diversity of human experience. We see how people in different times and places struggled with similar questions, faced different challenges, created their own unique ways of life.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that our own beliefs and perspectives are shaped by this long, intricate history, and that other cultures and traditions have their own equally valid stories and interpretations.
And that recognition is so important in the world today. It helps us connect with people from different backgrounds, encourages dialogue, and promotes tolerance in a world that often feels very divided.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into ancient Prayagraj, we're left not just with fascinating facts and unanswered questions, but with a sense of connection to the bigger human story.
We encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning. History is full of surprises, and who knows what amazing insights are waiting to be discovered.
And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. Until next time, keep those history-loving minds engaged.